So we all know that Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy has like 1,000,000 reviews, right? You're going to find 1,000,000 videos of people talking about it all over YouTube, all over the internet. There's literal like college courses, I'm pretty sure, that are taught just on this book. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything. But what I will do is I'm just going to talk about the points that really stuck out to me, the points that I really remember. And considering it's been probably 2 years at this point since I read the book, I think I'm going to be able to really just focus on the important stuff here. So at the very beginning of the book, we start off with the kid. And that's something that Cormac McCarthy does. If you don't know, he'll have his protagonist called things like, the kid or the man and the child. The kid is living in Appalachia with his dad up in the mountains out in Tennessee. And his dad, I'm pretty sure, is like an English teacher or like some kind of poetry teacher. But either way, the kid can't read. And it talks about how the kid just drinks and, he doesn't know his mom, doesn't know his sister, and the dad just drinks like crazy. I say the dad? The dad just drinks like crazy, and, he's a real POS. Well, I think that very first part, they're talking about how the dad is this kind of teacher, but the kid doesn't know how to read. I think that's really important. I think it works well as a kind of metaphor because Cormac McCarthy talks about Christianity a lot. There's a lot of references to Christianity and just religion in general in his stories. And I think that's a really interesting metaphor or analogy for something that happens often when you're a Christian and you get older. It's this big kind of fear that issue that people have where they kind of forget to teach their kids religion. They want their kids to be Christian like them, but they just kind of forget to do it, and they just don't do it. They don't teach their kids those things despite them having all of those skills. And that's something that this father is kind of doing to his son. His father teaches people how to read these things, and his son doesn't know how to read. And so the kid decides, fuck this, I'm out of here. Gets up and he leaves. He ends up heading down to Louisiana. He does a little bit of work, does some drinking, does some fighting. Someone tries to kill him. I think he gets stabbed. And then the bar owner's wife, I think, takes him in and tries to patch him up. But the kid doesn't want to be in debt to this woman. So he sneaks out. He says, screw that, I'm out of here, right? Again. He moves on, gets on a little boat, ends up heading down out to Texas, out to East Texas and Nacogdoches. Now, when he gets to Nacogdoches, and you'll forgive me if I don't remember the exact order some of these things happen in, I'm pretty sure I've got it. He gets to Nacogdoches, and there he is when it's raining. It's constantly raining in this town. It had been raining for a long time. I think he got a hold of a donkey or a mule or something like that. And he's riding that mule around. And when he's in this rainy, wet town, there's a tent revival going on. You don't know what a tent revival is. It's basically like a preacher, is there giving what seems to be almost like a never-ending sermon, and the people are kind of, feeling the spirit and all that, and everyone's getting together. And that's what's happening outside this town. He goes in to dry off. And that's when the judge shows up, Judge Holden. And it's immediately like, oh, this guy is weird, right? This guy's freaky. He's got no hair. He's pale. He's got a weird hat on. He doesn't take his hat off when everyone else is taking their hats off. And he goes up. He accuses the preacher of being a predator, a child predator, and saying that he had sexual relations with animals and all kinds of stuff, and that he's got a bounty for his arrest. And the preacher kind of seems to recognize what's going on, and he starts calling this guy the devil. He's the devil, people. Can't you see? This guy's evil. Don't listen to him. He's lying about me, blah, blah, blah. Everyone freaks out. Some people start shooting. I think the tent catches on fire. People start cutting their way out of this tent. They all get the hell out of there. Later, they're meeting up at this saloon, this tavern, whatever you want to call it. They're all drinking. And Judge Holden walks in, and all these people come up, and they're like, buying them drinks. And they're like, hey, we're getting a posse together, and we're going to go hunt that guy down because he got away. And it turns out that Judge Holden, he's just joking around. He's like, oh, I've never seen that man before in my life, right? And he just did it to be an asshole, basically. And but actually for a much deeper reason, as we'll later learn in the book. But everyone kind of laughs and just moves on, and it's like, whoa, this place is rough, right? That's your first taste of like, holy crap, this story, the people in this story are some really rough characters. Then the next, whenever it stops raining, the kid goes up and I think he's going to take a piss or something. He's walking along these, I forget what they're called, something planks, but they're what you see in like the old Wild West movies, like the wood boards, like the 2x4s that people walk across when it's real muddy. That's what he's walking along, and it's too thin for two people. He comes across this guy, and the guy's like, move out of the way, and the kid says, I ain't moving for nothing, right? And spits on the ground. He's only like 16 at this point, I think. And so him and this guy get in a fight. Now here's my question, because I've only read it through one time, and I didn't really understand it first, and I still don't really understand now. I'm not sure if the guy he fought is the dude that would later become his buddy, or if he fought a different guy, and then the guy with the club or whatever that knocks him on the head just kind of showed up to the fight. But either way, kid gets knocked out. He gets dressed. This guy's there, and he's like, hey, follow me. They go up into this hotel. Hotel manager's like, that guy up there's going to kill you. They go upstairs. They set the guy's room on fire. And that's another question I have. Is the guy's room they're setting on fire the guy that the kid fought, or is he? I couldn't tell if he was just some dude that the other guy had beef with. Popo, the police officers down this road, they've been waiting at the same spot in this place where I was just at. They've been waiting in the same spot for 4 years now. And now it throws me off because they decided to go to the other opposite side of the road and face a different direction after 4 years of sitting in the same spot. So it freaks me out every time I see them. Not that I drive crazy or anything. I mean, I'm technically making a video right now, but anyway, so he moves on, and to kind of gloss over it a bit, the kid ends up going on this kind of journey because they burned down the hotel in the process, and he's like, fuck, I got to get out of town. He goes and he gets his mule, gets the hell out of there, and the judge gives him one final like smile and nod, very ominous. Kid moves on. Kid ends up joining the army. Now, because he's, he needs stuff, and he experiences some trippy things, meets some weird people, but some guy, it's one of my favorite parts of the book because it's so hilarious. I guess it's not meant to be hilarious, maybe it is, but he goes into this bar because he gets out there around West South Texas way, and he goes into this bar, and there's this Mexican bartender, and the kid's like, give me a drink. And the bartender is only speaking Spanish, but he's like, dinero, money, give me some money. And the kid's like, I ain't got no money. He says, well, money for drink. And so the kid thinks naturally, the way it works in other places, maybe I'll just work for it. So he asks the bartender for a broom. Bartender seems confused, hands him a broom. The kid goes around the whole bar, sweeps everything up. Then he comes back and he says, there you go. Give me a drink, right? And the bartender's like, no, it still costs money. So the kid kills him, right? The kid bashes his fucking skull in with a bottle, takes a bottle, and gets the hell out of there. And that's when these army guys find him, where he's homeless, sleeping down by the river. And did my fucking microphone die? It did. Shit. Well, guess we're stopping that. All right. So I thought my mic died, but it didn't because I'm stupid. The light wasn't on, so I thought whatever, doesn't matter. So anyways, the kid gets found by these army dudes, and the army guys are like, "Hey, you killed that Mexican guy. We want to enlist you in the army." So he's like, "All right, fuck it." Because I said they'll give him a horse and some new clothes and stuff and a gun. And so he goes with them, joins the army, and they tell him, this captain of this company of dudes, right? There's not a whole lot of them. He says, we're going to go start a war, basically, right? We're going down to Mexico, and we're going to start a war. Because at this point, the Republic of Texas, I think Texas is officially a state by this point, but just barely, like literally just barely. And the revolution, the Texas revolution was only a few years earlier. So a lot of people are pissed off at Mexico still. We're going to go down, we're going to start a war. So he heads out with this army company of dudes, and right from the start, they seem like a bunch of guys that just don't know what they're doing, right? They're literally just going to walk and hope to find somebody and kill them and start a war with Mexico. They go down there, they're walking, and eventually it very quickly turns into just a war, or just a situation of survival where they're just trying to live. People are getting sick, people are dying of thirst and starvation, and they're walking through the desert, and it's just hell on earth, right? And then they get attacked by I think they get attacked by the Apache. Yeah, down that way, I think they get attacked by the Apache. Big Apache warband falls on them, kills everyone except for the kid. That's when we start getting to really screwed up stuff, because the kid and this other guy who managed to survive the attack are walking, and they're kind of following the path that these Apache came from, and they're finding dead horses and that bush full of dead babies, and little towns that have been just completely destroyed and are devoid of life. They end up getting arrested after these locals pick them up and take them to a town. They get thrown in jail immediately, but he manages to get picked up by the other guy dies, but the kid manages to get picked up by John Glanton, who's a Texas Ranger. And for those of you who don't know, the Texas Rangers were basically the first version of they're the Texas version of the Einsatzgruppen, right? Like the Nazi death squads. Their whole thing was to just go out and fight a war against the Comanche or the Apache, both, right? They're basically meant to make Texas livable for settlers, because it was absolutely insane, right? The whole reason why Texans became a thing, right? The whole reason why white people moved to Texas is because Mexico could not handle the Comanche up in the north of their territory, right? The Comanche and the Apache were fucking just destroying the Mexican military, just terrorizing them. And so the Mexican government was like, oh, well, let's invite a bunch of settlers to come in, and they'll kind of act as a buffer. And so that's why all these, white folks ended up moving up into Texas and then fighting that revolution. But guess what? Now the Comanche and the Apache are their problem. And so, I mean, the Texas Rangers' whole thing was just go around, kill as many of these dudes as you can. And that's who John Joel Glanton was, right? A real guy. He made himself a little posse to go Indian hunting. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They have scalps hanging off their horses and stuff, and they sell these scalps for money. They go out. Judge Holden is with them, of course. And they move on. And they just go on this kind of reign of terror. And we watch them. I'm really glossing over the majority of the book here, but basically what we're seeing is we watch them devolve, right? We watch John Glanton devolve more and more the more time he spends with this Judge Holden guy, and the harder things get, right? Because they're just not having much luck in the way of finding these Comanche and these Apache. And so slowly they start to okay. Ambulance. slowly, they start to kind of lose their mind, or at least John Glanton does, and he eventually says, screw it, we're just going to kill a bunch of civilians, scalp them, and try to sell those scalps. And so they just basically become a bunch of outlaw raiders, and they're just killing everyone. And, you know, there's bounties out for their heads now, and they're full-blown outlaws. They go through all kinds of crazy stuff, terrorizing all kinds of crazy people. And one of the best parts of the book is when the kid gets separated from his posse, right? And he's crawling. I want to say he's crawling through the desert, but he might be in the woods. Either way, he's fucked up. It's freezing cold. And he finds this tree that's on fire because it got struck by lightning. And he crawls up to it to feel the warmth of this tree. And it describes, Cormac McCarthy describes all these animals, right? All manner of creatures that should have no business hanging out with each other are all around this fire, right? There's tarantulas and snakes and coyotes and all kinds of animals just have gathered around this fire. And the kid is there too, just trying to feel its warmth. And I mean, that's absolutely amazing. I love it. Probably the best part of the book. But yeah, we go through the rest of the book, and I don't want this to just be a full-blown like synopsis. But I love that part. I love the biblical implications of it, and the whole book is pretty much just one giant biblical implication. But if you want to know everything that happens in the book, either read it or go watch Wendigoon's video, because that's what got me into wanting to read this book. He uploaded that 5-hour long video and said, pause the video right here and go read this book if you want to read it yourself. And I said, well, I guess I'll do that. And I did that. And I'm very glad I did, because it's easily the best book I've ever read, even though it's extremely difficult to read. I originally had a huge script. This was going to be a huge, long, 1 hour long video of me talking about everything. I'm not going to do it. I don't got the time for it. I think better YouTubers have already done that. So, one point that I want to jump to, I'm literally going to jump straight to the end here, is because I want to talk about this because Wendigoon didn't talk about this in this video. And he's usually really thorough, and I thought he was going to cover this, but he didn't. And I was really interested to hear his thoughts on it, but he just didn't cover it. It really bothered me. I haven't heard many people talking about this, honestly. It's the epilogue, right? The epilogue of the book. It's literally like 2 paragraphs, right? And it talks about this guy. There's a man moving across these great plains, and a bunch of holes have been dug for him. And it says that he goes up to the hole, he strikes fire into the hole, and then he moves on to the next one. There's a group of people with him. And that's the epilogue. And I think the epilogue is one of the most important parts of the whole thing. Arguably as important as the rest of the book after reading that. Because if you don't know what that means, you're probably like, what the heck is he talking about? Cormac McCarthy uses fire to symbolize hope and humanity, right? Goodness sometimes. And so when it says he's striking fire into it, so that would mean he's putting some kind of hope into this hole, right, is what he's doing. What are these holes? What's he doing? Well, at the time that this epilogue is happening, right, the time period this epilogue is happening, it's almost exactly when barbed wire started to spread all across the West, right? It's one of the inventions that tamed the West, right? Because then you could start having large bits of agriculture, and they are large bits of livestock, and they wouldn't just be out wandering. People were able to fence in their properties with barbed wire. I think that's what he's doing here. I think this group of people are creating a fence. They're building a fence. And that is a kind of hope, right? It's humanity's hope of, civilization is finally coming to this place. Civilization is finally coming to this war-torn area. But we have to remember the last thing that we heard in the actual book, which was Judge Holden basically saying, that he's never going to die. He's always going to be around, that he's always going to be doing stuff. And Judge Holden, of course, is a symbol of war, or the devil himself, which I believe, in this context is meant to also equate to war. Judge Holden is war. And he tells us, you have to remember, you have to pay attention to what your characters are telling you, especially if they're really smart characters, because that usually is the author telling you what to believe. And so when the judge tells you he's going to be around for a long time, he ain't going to stop, then you got to believe him. So in spite of this fire being struck into this hole, and in spite of this hope of civilization finally taming the West and bringing an end to war in this region, we can know that it will never end. It's just a temporary holding off of what will someday return. And it sounds very hopeless, right? It sounds like a hopeless scenario, but I don't think that's the point of any of Cormac McCarthy's writing. Cormac McCarthy writes about those little bits of hope amidst a massive shitstorm, while most stories tend to talk about a beautiful world with little bits of darkness. Cormac McCarthy likes to talk about the opposite of that, and that's the kind of stuff that I like to write about as well. A really shitty world with little bits of hope scattered throughout it. Little bits of good scattered throughout it. Because that's how life can feel pretty often for, I think, most people. My poor car. I'm so sorry. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I'm at work now. It's time to go in and work for 12 hours. It's dark out right now. And it'll be dark out when I leave to go home. Rock and roll. Adios.